Welcome to today's episode of Hawk's Eye on Business, the show where we dive deep with business leaders to learn the core purposes of their companies, along with their views on running a company, particularly on the topic of great leadership. Today we are fortunate to have a long-term accomplished leader of a highly successful regional company headquartered here in Dayton, Ohio, Scott McGohan. Welcome to Hawk's Eye on Business. McGohan Brabender was founded over 40 years ago with one central goal: to simplify the delivery of employee benefits for their corporate clients. As soaring costs and healthcare reform have dramatically complicated the insurance industry, McGohan Brabender has been there to simplify it. Along the way, they have redefined the role of insurance broker to meet the demands of the 21st century. They work by the concept that you don't have to accept skyrocketing claims costs as a fact of doing business. You can control them if you're up to the challenge. Insurance is confusing and insurance is intimidating. Their job is to make it less so. They work to bring clarity to the chaos. This Dayton-based regional firm brings a broad range of services to the market, including an innovative approach to individual retiree insurance coverages. They are a company that places a tremendous value on their employees, their culture, and on the importance of family. The offices of McGohan Brabender are filled with testaments to the people who work there. Our guest today is their chairman, Scott McGohan. Scott, welcome to Hawk's Eye on Business.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We're very glad you're here. Hey, we've got a lot of things to cover today, a little bit about the business, probably a lot more about leadership, but we'll mix it all together. Why don't you begin for our viewers with kind of an idea of the core purposes of the company that you lead, McGohan Brabender, and then we'll narrow down from there.
Yeah, so McGohan Brabender, we serve 1,200 employers, anywhere from, two guys in a shop to large universities, schools. That represents about 100,000 employees. And I like to say about 250,000 belly buttons, moms, dads, kids.
Yep, good.
And about $1.5 billion in healthcare spend for organizations. So we, kind of coach and lead and sell from the neck up and help organizations make those decisions in regards to their human capital expenses.
Okay, nice, concise definition.
Well,
now this began over 40 years ago, correct?
It did. My dad started off in the life insurance business,
okay.
And he had just somebody that said, "Hey, I've got this, health insurance, and I don't know if what I have is good. Can you look at it?" And he did, and he really enjoyed it. And actually, he went back to the customer and said, "What you have is great." And the guy started to pay him, and he goes, "Well, you can't pay me because I didn't do anything for you. I just told you what you have is good." And that guy really encouraged him, like, "Hey, I think you're really onto something here. I love your authenticity. I love the fact that you're a student. I don't know many people that do this," and he just fell in love with it.
Wow, so he realized the importance of the consultative approach as opposed to just bringing a product and slapping it on somebody.
We tell our own workforce, like, I hope people don't think we sell insurance, because that would be a miserable existence. I can't think of something worse.
It's much more than that.
Yes,
that's
it's
just
much more than
an
that.
element of the journey. Well, as I prepared for our time together, I got the chance to walk the halls with you of your organization, and I learned it jumps out at you that culture, employee engagement, family are really important elements to you. As kind of the foundation, truly, of your business. Can you explain some of the things you guys do at McGohan Brabender to create a great culture, to make it a great place to work and to be, let alone work?
Yeah, for a long time, we didn't know we had a good culture until people started telling us, which is actually, it's a great compliment.
Sure.
Because that tells us that maybe we were just doing it because it felt right. Yeah. Treating people with dignity and respect, and just trying to have fun, fighting the good fight. And so family is our number one priority. Okay. And when we put it, it encompasses our homes, our workplace, and our community. We feel like if we're virtuous and noble and maybe just trying to create better men and women, better moms and dads, that we would benefit from that, secondly. And if we did that, then our community would benefit.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter what you do. if that's your position. So, and we've borrowed shamelessly. We're about family, so we have a picture, 250 picture frames of every employee and their entire family in all 5 offices in Ohio. We have a toy closet.
I couldn't help noticing that when you walked me through. Tell our viewers a little bit about that. Why do you have a toy closet?
Cool. Well, you know, my dad, when kids would come in, I would see him go to his drawer and try to find like a golf ball or a light-up pen, something. And after a while, it was like, you know, we take away from children with their moms and dads that work for us.
They're in the office.
And when they hear the words McGohan Brabender, we would like for those kids to say, wow, like I like that place. So when we hire someone, we send flowers to the home. We call every new hire at home, welcome them aboard before their even first day. And then when their children come in the building, they get to go to the toy closet and they get to take a toy home. So snow days or, you know, just another, you know, in the summer, or mom says I have to go to the office, they know they get to go to the toy closet. And they're cool toys. They're not like you know, little cheap toys. They're nice toys.
Okay.
And they get to take those home. So.
Yeah, I mean, they seem like individually small things, but keep adding them up. At the core of it, it sounds like you would love your employees to, when their family hears them talk over the dinner table, to feel great things about where mom or dad works, as opposed to resenting where they work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It really is. So when you bring a new employee into the organization, how do you teach them about the culture of McGohan Brabender? How do you get that across? Maybe even before they join.
Yeah, I mean, one is, so we're looking at how do we attract a different workforce, and you know, retention and attracting a workforce is really important. So really understanding the purpose of why we do and why it's so important to us. And it's to empower business, because businesses love to go to do what they got into business to do, not to mess with healthcare. That they don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So we can empower them by taking those things off their desk. Okay. We can empower people by allowing them to maybe make good decisions, and then we can hopefully deliver healthier birthdays to people. So it's purpose driven. So when new hires come on board, we built about a 2,000 square foot immersion center. So instead of
an immersion center,
and so instead of a brochure or a binder, it's a room that is really, it's our entire story in a room. So folks that work in our organization, you have to know the story of McGohan Brabender from the neck up. Okay. So we don't want you to read what we do. We want you to tell people what we do. With your heart and your mouth and your eyes. And you know, and so we're starting to get a lot of younger people saying, like, I could get my head around this place. I can start to understand that. I can lean into that.
Yeah, you're getting what they feel more than what they intellectually take on board, I would think. Well, with the idea of being a good communicator, finding creative ways to communicate, I'm not the only guy that has a show. You have a show. You have a podcast called Side Effects.
Yep.
Can you kind of share your ideas and objectives behind this, what I would call extraordinary effort to communicate publicly?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that, so there's a lot of organizations, in my opinion, and people that are very interesting. I think what's important is to be compelling. We all grew up reading books, and even books with pictures. And I think what people would rather hear is a story.
Yeah, no doubt.
And we just have to be really good at storytelling. And so social media is a big deal. You can tell a story in a super brief period of time. Okay. You can make it humanistic. You can make it authentic. The podcast is a great way for us to express maybe our angst with healthcare, our solutions. We can be right, we can be wrong, but we're not afraid to just be fearless in a conversation. Okay. And we just have a lot of fun.
It sounds like it. So with that in mind, walking the halls, you've already talked about the toy closet, you've talked about the 250 picture frames with the families shown. I couldn't help noticing that you must do this with something when someone's done something really positive, because I couldn't help but noticing what appeared to be kind of a throne and a crown. And what do you do with that? What is that about?
That's called the victory card.
The victory card?
And that's a big deal.
Okay.
And so Tim Brabender and I, when we would get a new customer, we used to actually take people on piggyback rides, which is really
That's
weird.
a victory card in its own right.
And we had a bell, and you know, the older we got, the more it was just hard to pick people up. Plus, it was enormously awkward. So we ended up
Yes.
just building this this cart, and it's a cart, and it's got a tractor seat on the top,
Okay.
and it's got lights on it. And so when we get a new customer, we put people on that cart. They ring the bell, and the whole workforce comes to the center of the hallways in each office, and we talk about what just happened. My assistant, Victoria, has had breast cancer twice, and she just celebrated 10 years cancer-free.
Oh my.
So
Good for
we went
Victoria.
back and said, can we put you on the cart? So
A
we
different
put her
victory.
on the cart.
Yeah.
We had another employee who brought flowers to his wife for her 40th wedding anniversary. He said, would you take the flowers back to my wife? And I'm like, no, I'll put you on that cart and we'll take them back to your wife. So we just have a lot of fun and talking
feels like
about how do we celebrate different experiences in the building.
A very smart person told me that when looking at a company, it's the who that should come before the what.
Oh yeah.
Right? And it feels like you guys live big on the who we are
Oh yeah.
and how we
Yeah.
operate.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive a little bit into the business of McGohan Brabender to a different extent. Let's talk about your clients for a bit. I noticed that you work really hard to help your business clients, your corporate clients, with their employee engagement. Can you tell us how you guys do that?
Yeah, I mean, one is not every company is the same. So not every
Sure.
company has the same culture.
For sure.
So we have to lean into that organization and really kind of understand what are their core values.
Okay.
So we have a session called Core Beliefs. So we'll bring HR, CEO, and a CFO, and we'll ask them really thought-provoking questions around how do you want to manage this benefit structure? What do you believe in? And the intel from that core belief session allows us to kind of determine, okay, I think this is what a 3-year strategy looks like for this individual employer and their workforce. And it's just a variety of different strategies over time.
That sounds the opposite of responding to a request for a proposal.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan
That's
of
not your
RFPs.
thing, I'm betting, right?
No,
Yeah.
it's you know, I understand every industry has them,
Of course.
and they're important. We would like people before we answer an RFP is can we come out and talk to you first?
Yeah.
Instead of just responding to a piece of paper, we want to respond to people, and then answer the questions based on the paper.
When one of your clients is a new client and they just choose to do business with McGohan Brabender, what do they tend to say to you when you ask them, why did you choose us?
You know, it's funny, so we did this analysis on why people do business with McGohan Brabender, and we thought it was going to be very strategic, like they're super innovative, they do this, they do that, they do this, and all those things were important to them.
Okay.
The number one thing that was important to them is that they said this: we do business with you because you call us back. And we were blown away by that.
Wow.
So what we heard and what we felt is that because of our values, being responsive is a core value of MB. It's just responsibility.
Yeah.
It's being a
Of course
decent
I will
human
call
being.
you back. You're
Yeah.
my...
But
yeah,
we were
yeah.
surprised the fact that in their past experience, that wasn't a priority. So it is one of the things we tell our workforce too is you'll never get in trouble for trying to take care of a customer. You don't have to go knock on someone's door.
Great core value, right?
If it feels right, lean into it, and let's make a customer happy, and let's
We'll
let's
figure
just
out
move
everything
on.
else later, but let's
Yeah,
do that first, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. I don't know if you've written or spoken about this, but I've seen quotes attributed to you on the topics of wellness and well-being. Is there a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the word wellness because
Okay.
I think wellness. Well, I'll give you. Wellness is like love. Like I love ice cream, and I love my wife, and I love them in two completely different ways.
Completely different, yes?
I think when people think of wellness, they think of Fitbits or a 5K run.
Okay, yeah.
And when you
What's
think
my
of
resting heart rate?
Yeah, and all that kind of the gadgets, the activity basis. I think well-being begins to incorporate a lot of different issues and areas in our life. So it could be the spiritual aspect, financial aspect. Then you obviously have the health aspect, outside health.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that look like they're healthy. but on the inside they're not.
Racked with grief or anxiety or...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that don't look like they're healthy on the outside, but actually really are.
Okay.
So the power of biometrics, so the power of clinical data allows us to really look at a workforce to say, how do we look at this human capital and mitigate disease so we can deliver healthier birthdays to people?
It's not just a physical once a year
No.
to give them blood pressure medicine.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, 20% of the people will never do what you ask them to do.
Okay.
20% of the people will always do what you ask them to do. And it's that 60% that's available
Yeah.
that we're kind of just on a quest to kind of nudge and make different choices.
So clearly well-being is what you're striving for with your clients, not
Correct.
just a number on a page.
Yep.
Okay. So now I'm going to get my own personal experience. I recently, I have a family member who is turning 65. I won't reveal if it's myself or my wife coming up shortly, but it's one of us. And so that magic age of Medicare.
Yeah.
And it's confusing, but at the same time, it's super important. I learned that people in my kind of age bracket are racked with concern and anxiety about not being able to do it correctly or being worried they'll make a big mistake. You guys started something called RetireMed IQ. Could you explain to us what that's about?
Yes, we have a really good friend of ours, Don Makis. He's the president of RetireMed IQ. Okay. He worked at Humana, then he worked at Anthem, but he came to us and said, I want to start something on my own, but I don't have relationships with insurance companies, and we did. Okay. So we took his knowledge and intel, our relationships, and we considered the fact that for HR makes benefit decisions, because I'm sure over your career, you really never told HR what you wanted in regards to healthcare. They told you what you got.
That was more the norm, yes. Yeah.
So when you turn 65 and you go on Medicare, for the first time, people have never really had to make that decision. So RetireMed IQ was built for HR for people over age 65. So how do we bring human resources to that decision? Because doing nothing is a terrible option.
Yeah.
You have to do something.
Yeah, you've got to act.
And if we can help people make that decision in a better, faster way, and that's been enormously successful.
I got this thick manual from the Medicare, the government, federal government, and I'm looking through it, trying to understand all these choices, and it was extremely confusing, to be honest. And I've got a master's degree, so I should be able to assimilate this information, right? And I didn't, and I had a sit-down 50-minute session with one of your folks there at RetireMed IQ, and I walked away saying, oh, I can explain this to other people now. So human beings helping each other is a big, much better substitute than trying to pick it up on your own.
We tell people, take everything you get in your mailbox, put a rubber band in it, and then bring it in, and we'll explain it all to you.
I thought you were going to say put it in the dumpster.
No, no, we'll explain it to you.
Okay. Yeah. Good. There is a lot of mail that happens at that age. All right, let's go back to leadership if we can. I know it's such an important topic to you. What are the most important characteristics that you believe a great leader should possess?
Gosh, I think, storytelling is a big deal.
Yeah.
I think being somebody, can you inspire people? And that's a great trait. Personally, I think the greatest trait a leader can have is the gift of vulnerability. I think sometimes as leaders, we want to stand up too tall. We want to act like we've got it all figured out. And there's a number of people in this world that feel alone because they've made mistakes or they don't feel good about themselves. But as leaders, when we tell people that it's okay to make a mistake, that we've made them before, and that we've learned from those mistakes, it just lets people know that they're not alone anymore. And I've had a lot of people that say, hey, Scott, when you're vulnerable, it makes you look weak. And I'm like, actually, the fact that you just said that makes you look weak. So I think the gift of vulnerability is one of the greatest gifts that a leader should have.
Yeah. It literally invites them into your world in a more personal way than just about anything you could do, I suspect.
Well, it brings authenticity right into the front of the room.
Yeah.
And when we're authentic, that's when, personally, I think that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, really being truly real with each other.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Leaders make mistakes. If you had to think about what's the most common mistake, or at least a big mistake that you see leaders make or have seen leaders make,
Yeah.
What kind of stuff's in there, in that bucket?
A good question. I think one of them would be looking way too close at in the mirror instead of the windshield.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened yesterday? Like as a leader, your job is to look through the windshield. Where are we going?
Yeah.
And you're making decisions based on what happened in the mirror. And so sometimes you don't have to. You know, Clay Mathiel told me this one time. He said, Scott, you don't have to make one until you have to make one.
Yeah.
So sometimes you don't have to make the decision.
Sure. Sure.
So you can just rest on it.
Yeah.
And not making one is like, that's okay.
That's a decision in
Just
itself,
kinda, just kind of rest on it.
Take a little of the heat off and
then vulnerability. You know, really just ask other people. You know, hey, I'm struggling at this. Like, what would you do?
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
People want to help people. Just ask.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we get so caught up in, let's get all these emails answered, let's make sure we return these phone calls, let's do all these things we have to do, yet we sometimes don't think, we don't innovate, we don't.
I think
Really?
the greatest gift a leader can give its workforce is to actually walk on the floor of the shop, walk around the offices, know the people's names, look at people with your eyeballs.
Tom Peters, long ago, said leadership or management by walking around.
Yeah,
right?
and it's a
believed in it.
great gift. People by day, and sometimes it's paper by night.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes that's your job.
That's probably the right way to, the right times of day to handle those things. What are the most important decisions that you have to make in your world as a leader of your business?
Gosh, probably looking at short-term decisions that maybe people haven't thought about the long-term consequences of.
Yeah.
Making sure that we don't leave people alone in their thoughts. So if you're
What do you mean by that? I want to, if I can.
You know, I think as a leader, when you talk and you stand up and you're talking about, you know, where the company's going and profitability, or if you're bestowing any sort of fear into people, like, hey, I'm afraid of where the industry. I'm a big fan of honesty and truth, but if you don't have time to explain it, because people will make up their own stories.
Yeah.
We've got this uncanny ability to tell ourselves some pretty bad stories.
Right.
And if you don't have time to explain that in clarity and in rawness, then maybe you just shouldn't explain that right now. And don't leave people alone in their thoughts.
On the topic of great communication, trying to find alternative ways to get a message out there, I can't help noticing the investment that you have made, and I presume it's to communicate with your clients, prospective clients, and certainly your employee group. You have video, you have, we've already talked about a podcast, you have a very dynamic website or set of websites, and you certainly understand the importance of social media. Can you talk a little bit about all this bundle of energy you build around, and investment you build around communications, and all the means possible to you beyond the kind of normal, here's a memo, here's an email note?
Yeah, our business is changing. I mean, we used to be a paper-based business, and now we're in this electronic world, and it's moving really quickly. So we believe in the power of communication. It's one of our core values, and knowledge. So if we have this knowledge, how are we going to communicate it?
Okay.
Paper and mail is probably not a good idea, because we've spent decades doing that. People want to hear stories, so we invested in a full-time copywriter. I like to write, but I probably need someone to proofread what I write.
Okay.
And then we have content that needs, someone to proofread that content.
Sure.
So full-time copywriter, full-time graphic designer. So we love just kind of changing, the themes inside of our company, and we like having access internally. So if an idea comes, we can say, hey, you know what, I kind of like that, twerk a little bit, and then bring it back.
Okay.
Full-time videographer, so in our studio, we've got about a 1,000 square foot studio.
Okay.
We'll do podcasts, we'll do Snapchat videos, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram videos, live podcasts. It's a big investment.
This
for
is
our
not normal in
organization.
a 250-person company to have that investment in those
Yeah.
resources.
I mean, it's probably, it's several $100,000.
Yeah.
But I'm telling
Plus
you.
the assets of not just the
all
ongoing
the
expense.
stuff.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you. It's one of the last things that would come off the truck. So if the weather got bad,
Yep.
it would be one of the last things that would come off the truck, for a variety of reasons. One is it is just it's really nice to be able to control that all in-house.
Yeah.
It's really nice to hire Kenzie Fell, who runs social media. Bright, young, and understands it.
Yeah.
And has the courage to say, hey, Scott, that's a really good idea, but hey, it's 2019, so can we talk about this?
Okay.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
And I get to listen to that. So, you know, communication, tell a story in 10 seconds, tell a story in 15 seconds, tell a story in a minute, tell a story in 2 minutes. And that team of people, they just bring that to life.
Well, the importance of, it sounds like, of meeting people where they are, too. Everybody, I believe, generation or two below me don't like to watch the evening news, don't get that hard copy or even digital newspaper anymore. They see things in different ways. Twitter is their real-time news feed, for example.
Yep.
And so it sounds like you're covering lots of bases.
Yeah, we're trying.
Yeah, for sure. We're getting near the end of our time, but I want to ask you a couple of more things, if you don't mind. What are a few resources as a student of leadership, a few resources you would recommend to someone who is looking to gain insight into becoming a better leader?
Gosh, you know, I've said leadership is an inside job.
Yeah.
So
say more.
It's about self-awareness.
Okay.
So do you understand your core values? And if you don't understand your core values, an organization will define them for you. And so understanding because I built my life from the outside in. So I thought the clothes that I wore, the car that I drove, or the house that I lived in, or the country club that I belonged to defined me. That's terrible. It's a bad way to live.
You're saying it in the past tense, though, so you've evolved, right?
Yeah, so when you begin to turn your life from the inside out and understand that your identity doesn't have to be in things or people and places, there's a big freedom in that. Yeah. Now, that's a lot of hard work. That's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, self-examination too, in a big way.
And I think, so any book on emotional intelligence and any willingness to look at that, I don't even think it's a table stake. I think it's a survival tool. So any book there, Aileron is a great resource in this community. I mean, just magnificent resource.
Speaking of Clay Mathiel, who you mentioned earlier, right, in our time together, what he built out there in North Dayton is a phenomenal resource.
So how do they teach organizations to perpetuate and just the professional management? You know, obviously University of Dayton, Entrepreneurship for Leadership. I mean, there are so many resources in this community. If someone says, I don't know how to grow as a leader in this community, then
we got some help for you.
Yeah, exactly. We got a lot of resources for you.
Yes. Okay, great answer. This is what I, in the interviewing world, would call the catch-all question, Scott.
Gotcha.
Before we close, is there anything else that you would want our viewers to hear or you would want to mention about either the company of McGohan Brabender or the broad topic of leadership that we haven't really touched on much yet?
No, I think I'll just go back to what my dad said is, you know, he wanted us to do 3 things really well. Number 1 is to treat our employees the way we wanted our customers treated. So that was really important.
Yeah.
Number 2 was to stay profitable so we could always make good decisions. I've watched a lot of businesses that have made poor financial decisions and they're forced to make poor character decisions because of that.
Driven by the financial need, they have to make a bad.
And then the third one, and it's really important to us, is give back to a community that gives to us.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we're leaning back in the community in a variety of different ways. So that rule of 3 has really, really helped us.
Strong, very strong. Scott, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
And thank you for watching this episode of Hawk's Eye on Business. It has been a pleasure to have the chairman of McGohan Brabender, Scott McGohan, with us today. And we encourage you to tune in next time. Thank you very much.